What would you do if you woke up one frozen morning and found two abandoned newborns in your boat? No names, no footprints, no clue who they were, or why they were left for you. An old fisherman who found them makes a choice that will change not just his life, but the lives of two children whose past is shrouded in silence. But 18 years later, just as their lives begin to feel whole, a letter arrives, and with it, the past comes knocking. Listen to today's story until the end, and please let us know where you're listening from. Please do subscribe to our channel. In the snow-covered lakeside town of Stillwater, Montana, winter had sunk its claws deep. James Whitaker, a weathered black fisherman with hands like driftwood and a heart wrapped in quiet grief, woke before dawn. His boots crunched across the frozen earth toward Lake Echo, a place he'd known since boyhood. That January morning, intending only to check his ice fishing gear, James opened the hatch of his old wooden boat and froze. Inside, wrapped in woolen blankets, lay two newborns, a girl and a boy. No note, no footprints, no explanation. Just the hush of snowfall and the groan of shifting ice. Without hesitation, James scooped them up, pressed them tightly to his chest, and carried them home. Their tiny bodies shivered against his coat, and their muffled whimpers clung to the frozen air like fragile music. That day, his quiet, weathered cabin gained not just two new souls, but a purpose it hadn't known in years. He lit a fire, warmed milk, and wrapped them in every blanket he could find. The girl he named Sophie, after his late wife's favorite storybook character. The boy he named Ethan, after his father, a man of few words but deep compassion. And in naming them, in feeding and rocking them to sleep by the fire, James unknowingly began stitching together the torn pieces of his own shattered heart. Life changed in Stillwater. The townsfolk whispered at first, "Who leaves babies in a boat? Was the old man hiding something?" But James offered no story. "I found them. They're mine now," he'd say, then go silent. With time, suspicion softened to acceptance. The twins thrived under James's care. Sophie grew bold and fiery, chasing geese and hollering at moose. Ethan was her opposite, quiet, curious, content to sit by the lake and skip stones into silence. James taught them to fish, to read the wind, to listen to the lake's mood. Every night he made up stories by the fire. Still, he never told them the truth of how they arrived. On Sophie and Ethan's 16th birthday, questions stirred. "Grandpa," Sophie asked one night, "did you really find us in a boat?" James looked into the fire. Yes, that was all. The children didn't press, but seeds had been planted. 2 years passed. They became inseparable fixtures of Stillwater. Ethan worked with the town mechanic. Sophie volunteered at the school library. But the unknown clawed at them. Who were they? And why had someone left them? Then came the envelope. It was just another morning, or so it seemed. The wind was calm, the lake unusually still. But something hung in the air, something unspoken. Sophie found it first. It was cream-colored, thick and unmarked. No stamp, no name, no return address. She turned it over slowly, feeling a strange chill despite the warmth of the day. When she handed it to James, his hands trembled before he even touched the seal. He opened it with the same reverence he might give to an old memory. The slip of paper inside was plain, just one line, in dark blue ink that looked handwritten. "They are ours. We're coming back." No date, no names, no explanation. The room fell silent. James's shoulders sank as if the paper weighed more than it should. He stared at it so long Sophie wasn't sure he'd speak. And when he finally did, it was more to himself than to her. "I knew this day would come." "Who are they?" Sophie asked. James whispered, "I don't know. But I have an idea." A week later, a sleek black SUV with DC plates rolled into Stillwater. Out stepped Richard and Catherine Kessler, elegant, poised, and utterly out of place. James met them at the porch. "We're here for Ethan and Sophie," Richard said. They presented DNA results. Political history, a past marred by fear and ambition. The twins had been left to protect a legacy, not lost but hidden. Catherine's tone was clinical. "We can give them more. Education, opportunity, a real future." James stared at the lake. "They already have one." The Kesslers didn't relent. They visited daily. They brought lawyers, papers, promises. Ethan was tempted, not by wealth, but by truth. "I just want to know who I am," he told Sophie. Sophie burned with anger. "You know who you are. You're ours." The tension split their world. James, too, faded. His once strong frame hunched, his voice softer. "If you leave," he told them, "the door stays open." Always. One snowy morning, Ethan packed a bag and stepped into the Kessler's SUV without looking back. Sophie stood on the porch, tears frozen to her cheeks. James put an arm around her. He's not lost. He's searching. Months passed. No word. Sophie withered. She kept herself busy tending to the garden, feeding the chickens, but the silence left by Ethan's absence echoed louder with each passing day. James aged more visibly. His steps slowed. His eyes grew cloudier. He said little, but Sophie could tell he was waiting for Ethan, or at least a sign. And then finally, a letter. It was 3 lines in Ethan's familiar scrawl. Sophie, I don't know who I am, but when I close my eyes, I see you and Grandpa. I haven't forgotten. Hope returned, but also fear. What had he become? Sophie traveled to D.C. She found him in a blazer, caught in camera flashes, a puppet in a political image. You're not a symbol, she told him. You're Ethan. You're ours. He broke. The tight composure he'd maintained for months cracked, and his voice trembled. Not with weakness, but with yearning. Take me home. That one sentence said everything. Regret, hope, and a longing to be whole again. Ethan's return was quiet. No parade, no big speech, just a knock. Sophie opened the door and hugged him hard. James didn't speak. He didn't have to. His eyes said everything. You came back. They sat by the fire that night, just like always. James's health declined. He gave Ethan a small wooden box. Open it when I'm gone. A month later, James passed in his sleep. No drama, just peace. James's hand rested over his chest. His breathing ceased, his body peaceful, like someone who had finally laid down the last of his burdens. They didn't cry right away. They just sat beside him, holding his hands, honoring the silence of a man who had given them everything without ever needing to say much at all. Ethan opened the box. Inside, a letter. I didn't save you. You saved me. I was adrift, a man hollowed out by loss, until the day I found you in that boat. Blood means nothing if there's no love to bind it. What we shared wasn't duty. It was choice. It was heart. You were my reason for waking up every day, for believing in something again. Don't forget that. When the world makes you question who you are, remember what we built here. Out of nothing but kindness, stories, and trust. That's what matters most. They didn't cry in the usual way. They grieved by remembering every story he told, every knot he taught them to tie, every look that said I'm proud of you without needing words. And in that quiet grief, they found a strange kind of peace, a peace rooted in the love James left behind. Sophie turned the cabin into a community library. Ethan rebuilt the dock. A wooden sign stood above it, to the one who held us when we were drowning. Visitors came. Some heard the story. Some didn't believe it. But those who knew Ethan and Sophie saw the truth. A fisherman chose love over fear. And that choice changed everything. What would you have done if you were in Ethan and Sophie's shoes? Would you follow the truth written in your blood, or stay loyal to the love that raised you? Please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below.